People inherently fear evil. However, occasionally, a person may become seduced by evil.
You know, I love talking about villains on this channel, and most of the time I'm content with my Right and Wrong series, where I go over some specific examples on how to properly do things, at least in my humble opinion. But today I figured we'd do something a little bit different, and instead of focusing on the negative, we'd focus on the positive, and I'd talk about what I think are the greatest villains in video games. Obviously when you talk about a subject like that, it's gonna be subjective, but I hope you guys come up with who you think are the best. And this isn't the be-all, end-all of all great video game villains. This is just me giving my own two takes. Whether it be their designs, their roles, or the sum of their parts, villains are a necessary element to a game's story, and oftentimes they act as a challenge the players must overcome. So, I'm MangaKamen, and join me as we dive into the world of video game villains. You know, if there's one thing I can be thankful for, considering the Netflix adaptation of Devil May Cry, it's that it drew me back into the world of DMC. Just not that one.
And I got a bigger dick.
Dear God, I'm gonna have to revisit that one soon. But until that Yamato appears in my side, I might as well talk about one of the highlights of the series, and that would be its villains. Most notably for this video, though, Virgil. Now, I'm aware there are people who won't want to consider Virgil a villain, especially in the traditional sense, but he is one of the major antagonistic figures in 2 of the games, and thanks to his actions have actually put the world in danger. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to focus on Devil May Cry 3, though I will bring up 1 and 5 slightly in this, but I do want to make a full-on video on Virgil in the future, so if you're interested in that, consider leaving a like and comment. I know it's super early in the vid for me to say that, but I really want to do a Virgil video, and I want to make sure there's interest in that. Anyway, Virgil, the older son of the Demon Knight Sparta, and twin brother to protagonist of the series Dante, a skilled half-human, half-demon who possesses great power, but is on a mission for more of it. And in Devil May Cry 3, I found to be an amazing villain. He has all the elements that make a great villain, where he acts as a great contrast to the protagonist. While Dante in the game is carefree, brash, and embraces his humanity, Virgil is cold, calculating, and sees his own humanity as a weakness.
Why do you refuse to gain power? The power of our father, Sparta.
Father? I don't have a father. I just don't like you, that's all.
This contrast makes their rivalry personal and emotionally charged, and that leads into the motivation that Virgil has, since his drive stems from a desire for control and strength, sparked from the death of his mother and how he was too weak to save her. It's a relatable motivation, but much like how a good villain is supposed to be, it takes that motivation and warps it. His pride and stoic nature cover his inner conflict, which adds layers to him. And obviously, he's pretty much the centerpiece of the entire story. Raising the Temen Negru is the driving force to the plot, and will actively force Dante to confront his own identity and eventually coming to realize that he needs to accept the demon blood flowing through his veins. That's why DMC 3 has the subtitle of Dante's Awakening. Of course, we can't forget the gameplay aspect of Virgil. This is a gaming-based video, so we do need to talk about the 3 major boss fights that he has, which arguably are one of the most well-designed boss fights in the entire game. The first fight, Virgil shows off his core moves, which has you test your basic reflexes. Virgil's moveset is filled with rapid and precise attacks, which demand you to master Dante's mechanics, and while there is a steep skill curve there, it's rewarding when you can actually match against the guy. In the next fight, not only does he have Beowulf, a weapon that the players at that point didn't get, but he also has his Summon Swords ability and becomes notably tougher with his Devil Trigger. And finally, after dealing with the other major antagonists of the game, with you working alongside Virgil,
I'll try it your way for once. Remember what we used to say? Jackpot.
Still awesome to this very day. The third and final fight is the real test of skill. The whole of this is upped by his speed and power being enhanced, and makes the final duel a true test of everything that the game has thrown against you, like how a real final boss should be. And the thing is, Virgil is a tough boss, but he's a fair one. He has clear tells, which rewards the player for having observation and practice. It keeps the fights engaging without feeling deep, and even on the higher difficulties too. It forces the player to think and actually strategize, since if you're going with button mashing, you're just asking for a Yamato up the ass. And finally, what makes Virgil an amazing villain is the tragic element to his character, since he has the same issue as Dante, not accepting a part of himself. Only instead of his demon half, Virgil finds the human side of him to be what holds him back.
Now, my soul is saying it wants to stop you!
Unfortunately, our souls are at odds, brother. I need more power.
And we're supposed to be twins.
Twins. Right.
But because of that, he loses to Dante, who had accepted both his human and demon blood, falling into the depths of the demon world and eventually becoming a slave to Mundus, becoming a slave of Nello Angelo in the first game. And later on in DMC5, part of the whole element of that story is that Virgil successfully removes his humanity and becomes a full-on demon. Of sorts. Virgil has all the makings to what makes it a compelling and amazing villain in gaming. Personal connection to the main character, a tragic backstory that gives him motivations, and not to mention, the guy's got some serious style. You gotta admit, Virgil does set a pretty high bar here for villains. Come on. You know this channel, you know me. It has to be this way, and you don't want to fuck with this senator. Senator Stephen Armstrong is a great villain despite the lack of screen time, and is someone who has been recognized for years to be a memeable and entertaining character.
That's a nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
You've got a hulking nanomachine-fueled badass who's a US senator. Now I don't know about you, but badass and politician don't normally click for me. But then you've got Armstrong with his bombastic personality.
Don't fuck with this, Senator!
Oddly complex ideology, and a deceptively crafted boss fight. The legacy of Senator Armstrong proves that a villain like him can not only leave players awestruck, but also chuckling at his absurdity.
Making the mother of all omelets here, Jack. Can't fret over every egg.
Armstrong is a masterclass in video game villainy, and it's helped by his charisma, even if he doesn't write his own speeches.
Well, I don't write my own speeches.
The moment we see this guy in person, actually see him face to face, he comes off as just one heartless bastard in a suit. And don't get me wrong, the guy is a heartless bastard in a suit, but when he rolls up his sleeves, that's when the insanity begins.
Let's go. The hell are you thinking?
All of a sudden, you got a corporate suit to a guy who's got enough muscles to make The Rock insecure, slamming into the main character who I may remind you is a highly advanced cyborg, and this politician is now wiping the floor with said cyborg badass that we've been playing throughout this game. It's really a mind-breaking experience to think that a politician could easily go toe-to-toe with a militarized cyborg. Then again, this is the Metal Gear universe. I've seen weirder things in this franchise. Armstrong, from a narrative perspective, is what you'd call a puppet master, the manipulator who instills global conflicts so he can fund his political career, all so he can end war. His goal is to dismantle the corrupt systems that our country has devolved into, with a focus on the rule of strength to solve the issues.
I have a dream.
What?
That one day, every person in this nation will control their own destiny. A land of the truly free, damn it. A nation of action, not words, ruled by strength, not committee. Where the law changes to suit the individual, not the other way around.
I think it's safe to say that a lot of us, no matter your political leaning or where you're from, have issues with how our governments work. And on the risk of slathering this section of the video in political-based paint and getting clipped out of context, I also think it's a safe bet that we all have our own ideas on how to improve a government body, while at the same time tearing down the previous establishment that has failed so many people in different ways. In that sense, you can see that there's a bit of a relatable motivation with Armstrong. Granted, that motivation is pretty much the only thing you should relate to Armstrong to, because this is the same man who was willing to fund the removal of kids' brains and insert them into cyborg soldier bodies to have them be a military force. And that's a good thing. I mean, from a literary and villain standpoint, what makes Armstrong a great villain is that his motivations make sense, but because of his warped sense of pride and violent nature, he's twisted that motivation to be a sick, the ends justify the means element, where someone is willing to break whatever moral quandaries and humanitarian no-nos to fulfill their dream, quote-unquote. Armstrong is a mirror to the main character, Raiden, someone who throughout the game was also justifying his own bloodshed.
My sword is a means to an end. To protect those you'd prey on.
Really? Let me ask you. All those cyborgs you've killed up to now, maybe they weren't kids, but they were people. You ever think about them? When you're chopping them into hamburger?
They're adults. They made their choice.
It's just that Armstrong really takes this up to a much higher extreme and something that the actual confrontation brings up.
Use whatever methods you see fit. You don't let legal bullshit get in the way. And if it costs a few lives, so be it.
A lot of people have often just put this game as a slice and dice whatever you want with the over-the-top action thriller. But there is a lot of thought-provoking elements to the game if you really want to dive into it, especially when it comes to the bosses. Oh no, if only there was a video that actually dove into how brilliant these bosses were, but where would we ever find something like that? Oh no! Pointless shilling aside, I think it's safe to assume that there's a lot of political debate to be had when it comes to this character. That for the last 15 years there have been numerous discussions about his political leanings. You kinda can't avoid talking about that since he does critique the real-world issues that our own world deals with.
Fuck all these lunatic lawyers and chicken shit bureaucrats! Fuck this 24/7 internet spew of trivia and celebrity bullshit!
Of course, when you're playing the damn game, while these thoughts do go through your brain, you don't really have a lot of time to think about this unless you don't mind getting choke-slammed into the dirt. And that's because Armstrong is a very intricate boss too, especially on the higher difficulties. Armstrong is a human tank, but the fight requires the player to engage with the mechanics of it, including the parry system and Zandatsu. That one is especially necessary if you don't want to get through the fight without getting your ass handed to you. There's also the music. I've talked about how symbolic it has to be this way for the fight is, and there's a good representation of the conflict between Raiden and Armstrong, but it's still just a really great song regardless. Wrap all these elements together and you got a villain who's memorable on various levels. It all comes together so well and makes the character amazing. There's just one last thing to say about Armstrong, really.
I was wrong. You're not greedy. You're batshit insane!
That scene is all you really need to see how glorious Daisaku Kuze is. In the neon-lit world of Yakuza 0, where real estate battles spark gang wars against you, and people with too much free time and doing some of the most absurd things. When all things considered, when you get back to the grounded story of the game, this lieutenant of the Dojima family sticks out in your mind, especially since he's relentless with his determination. Which makes sense since the guy's a former boxer, and he's willing to get back at you after you made him look like a fool. I mean, when you're forced to lose a pinky to some snot-nosed punk, you definitely will cause some negative feelings. Especially when you're a man of pride and honor, where he fights not for power, but to prove his worth in the cutthroat world of the Yakuza. Kuze is one of the driving forces of the plot in the entire game, where he acts as a major player as one of the Dojima family lieutenants, where he's following orders under the head of the Dojima family, where Kiryu would be forced to take the fall for a murder that threw a wrench in the plan of the Dojima family of acquiring the vacant lot. It's a whole thing. It's play the game. The game has you confront Kuze at 5 different times throughout it, and despite him being a former boxer past his prime, Kuze is still a very capable fighter. Fast hooks, uppercuts, and even illegal moves like elbow strikes make Kuze to be a harsh force to reckon with. He serves as a wake-up call for new players, forcing them to actually engage with Kiryu's style of fighting due to the lack of grabbable objects in the combat zone. And every time you fight him, he raises the stakes, like using a metal pipe in the iconic second boss fight in the sewers, or using steel knuckles after that. But what really sells Kuze is performance and design. Hitoshi Ozawa is a veteran of the Yakuza films, and with his gravelly voice and unhinged yells, he sells the intensity of the character, and it makes every encounter super cinematic, amped up by the iconic theme, Pledge of Demon, a pounding rhythm that enhances the fight's stakes. Kuze represents a lot about what is honorable, quote-unquote, in the Yakuza. It's something that Kiryu himself believes in, that there's some level of honor in being a Yakuza, loyalty and respect. It's just a dark and twisted version of the Bushido Code, old values that are slowly being phased out. An element of the main character, Kiryu represents said values heroically. To Kuze, killing in the Yakuza is not something to be done lightly, not without a good enough reason.
殺しちまったら何も聞き出せねえだろうが、てめえを殴るしか能がねえのか？お？
あと少しで口はありますよ、こいつは。
まだわかんねえのか？拷問が通じる男じゃねえよ。いい加減他の手考えろや。
You see, Kuze is a dying breed in the Yakuza, as highlighted by his fellow lieutenants Awano and Shibusawa, both of whom are willing to do things that aren't so honorable, even with Yakuza standards.
話にならねえよ。
Meanwhile, Kuze's motivation is to rise to the ranks of the Tojo clan and restore the honor he lost when Kiryu kicked his ass, and subsequently lost his honor with his pinky. It's why when you fight him for the last time, he explains that he's not here for the Yakuza. The only thing that's driving him is his pride.
俺を今動かしてるのはな、男の意地ってやつだ。それさえありゃ、男は笑いながら死ぬことだってできる。 俺とお前どっちの意地が上に行くか見ものだな。
Kuze as a villain is one who, while his hands are dyed in crimson, he is an honest character. He's a villain who has conviction to rise to the top of the Yakuza, restoring his honor and fight with his own 2 hands. He's essentially the kind of Yakuza that our protagonist Kiryu views in a romanticized way. The traits of honor, loyalty, strength, and respecting the family. In a world of darkness and crime, while Kuze certainly is nowhere near being a good guy, he's a Yakuza that would be the best of the best in hell. Also embodying the best of the game, unyielding, dramatic, and unforgettable, acting as the spark that would awaken the dragon of Dojima.
Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live. There are 387.44 million miles of printed circuits in wafer-thin layers that fill my complex.
This section could honestly be its own video, since I'm focusing more on the aspect of artificial intelligence with these villains along with another aspect. Why? I don't know. Maybe I'll make a more detailed about them in the future, since this one will only scrape the surface of why they're great. These 3 villains fall into the vein of AI villains. And no, I'm not talking about the AI that will one day replace me as a creator to produce something not slop, but the AI that will do what it can to destroy the human soul.
So, what AI is doing right now?
Sad thing about that joke is that we're getting closer and closer to that point of Skynet now. First from System Shock 2 is Shodan, the god-complex AI who thinks humanity is nothing more than meat and bone. Her glitchy voice haunts players as her horrendous human experimentations run to kill the player. And to make matters worse, she's not just a villain, she's the environment, always watching, always one step ahead. Then we have Am from I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, a former war supercomputer that gained sentience and went full-on sadist, wiping out all of humanity and keeping 5 poor souls to torture them for the remainder of eternity with twisted psychological nightmares. A being of pure hatred in digital form, a villain who's not just one, but also wants to make people suffer. And finally, Wheatley from Portal 2! Out of the 3, he's probably the most charming of the 3 AIs, with him starting out as a bubbling robot buddy who helps you guide through Aperture Science's puzzle chambers. But the moment this guy gets a little taste of power, he turns paranoid, a chaotic tyrant, sabotaging everything with surprisingly incompetent schemes. He's an underdog villain that comes out of nowhere, and that's what makes him great. But you may be wondering, why are these 3 great villains? Well, Shodan doesn't want to just kill you, she wants to transcend you. She's the driving force behind System Shock 2's survival horror vibe, which has the player scavenge and hack under her every watchful eye. You're haunted by her influence from almost every audio log and mutant you face. Am has a similar feel. The world you're trapped in is his omnipresence in it. He's always around watching you, creating a suffocating sense of helplessness. You can almost feel the hatred seeping from the screen, and it helps that each of the characters you play has a personalized torture chamber that exploits their deepest flaws, something that Am takes so much joy out of doing. And Wheatley? Well, he's got the charm and humor that makes his betrayal all the more stinging when it happens. Sure, he takes over Aperture Science, but it's more like his incompetence turns the test chambers into death traps. He's not particularly evil per se. I mean, it can be argued. It's more like giving a monkey a shotgun, which is more unpredictable. Throw in his rivalry with GLaDOS and you got proof that villains don't need to be scary to be unforgettable. And if you notice one aspect of these villains, it's that their presence is with the players throughout the entirety of their games. You can feel the gaze of Shodan, the depressing wrath of Am, and Wheatley's comedic panic. The 3 feel like they're actually alive in their games. They all have personalities that the players actually interact with throughout it, even if they don't really know it. They challenge you, they scare you, they make you laugh at times, but at the same time, they raise questions about AI, power, humanity, and the glory of space. These villains don't just drive the plots of their games, they define them, and that's what makes them great. Even more so that the players can spend a lot of time with them, even if they want to kill you and you don't even realize it until... This one is going to be super spoiler heavy, so if you're not interested in that, I would suggest you skip this if you're not familiar with Persona 4 or Golden. Thankfully, YouTube has given us chapters, so you can just scroll down and skip. I'll give you a few seconds before we go on to continue. Alright then, so, time for the big reveal. The big bad of Persona 4 is...
You're always so strict at the station, but you're a cool dad inside, huh?
Shut up, Adachi.
Adachi. So, if you're not familiar with Persona 4, the entire plot revolves around murders that occur on foggy, rainy days, with the victims showing up on what is called the Midnight Channel before they disappear and only found again when dead. The game revolves around saving possible victims who most of the time join up with your party and help solve the cause of these murders and the person who's causing them. To save some time and not completely spoil everything in the game's story, the real culprit is Adachi, a police detective transferred from the big city to the small town of Inaba. Adachi as a villain is a fascinating case when you really boil down the character, because he's just a simple guy for the most part, with his actions driving the plot of Persona 4 without actually overshadowing it. He's more of a catalyst for the events that happen, and it really all stems from a single motivation, and that would be human flaws. Boredom, entitlement, resentment. He's a low-ranking detective in a hick town, putting all that time and effort into becoming a policeman just so he could carry around a gun. I want to point out that Adachi is a sick individual, especially when we see his encounters with the first 2 victims, both of which are women, and yeah, I'm sure you guys can put 2 and 2 together from that. When he doesn't get what he wants, he just throws them into the TV world and allows the shadows to do what they do best. kill. I think what makes Adachi a really good narrative-based villain is how he really encompasses the opposite philosophical weight of the game. Persona 4 as a game has a lot of themes, a lot of optimistic values like friendship and truth, and hell, one of the most iconic battle themes basically reinforces that.
I face up, I hold up, I reach out to the truth of my life, seeking the seas of the whole moment to now break away.
It's pretty much one of the prevailing themes, and Adachi flies in the face of that. His nihilism, believing that life is meaningless and people are hypocritical, highlight this.
Let's be honest. There's nothing great about the real world, is there? It's just dull and annoying as hell. No one accepts that's the way things are. They're just stuck with it because they can't deny it either. Those who actually succeed in life, they just happen to be born with a magic ticket called talent. If you don't have it, you can either accept or deny that fact until you die. That's your only choice. Once you realize that, all you have left in life is despair. The ultimate game over.
It's also reflected in the player's journey. If you're not an antisocial freak like me, more often than not, the protagonist will build bonds with people to uncover the truth, creating connections and friendships on the process. Adachi, though, rejects these sorts of things, embracing isolation, and Persona 4 Golden allows the player to glimpse into Adachi's psyche, seeing his mindset much more clearly. What also makes Adachi rather stand out is that he has mundanity to him, that he's just an average everyday guy on the surface to the point where most people around him are unaware of the darkness that lies underneath. And that's what a lot of evil people are like. They have this mundanity to them that makes you unsuspecting of their true nature, and to have a villain like that really works well. It's safe to say that there are quite a variety of villains in the world of gaming, and I've barely scratched the surface of any of them. To me, a villain in gaming needs to have so many qualities to it. They need to be memorable, they need to stand out from the rest of the bosses and bad guys, they need to have charm, charisma, or a level of threat to them to make them effective. And they also need to be able to... I'm sorry, I just realized we've still got a lot of time left on the video. Do I really ramble for that long in my conclusions nowadays? This just doesn't... Mommy?
Hades? Who's Hades?
Look. Just like the villain we're about to talk about, I wanted to throw a last-minute curveball because I've been wanting to talk about this guy for a long while. Hades of Kid Icarus Uprising. And the thing is, until his introduction, Hades is in the shadows, not even mentioned. It isn't until you beat the original big bad of the game, Medusa, in Chapter 9 and the credits start rolling that Hades makes his introduction.
Congratulations! I know it wasn't always easy.
Oh, but it was so worth it. With the world at peace again, even the sun feels warmer.
Aw, you're so cute, Pit.
Now wait just a second.
Huh? Did you hear something?
I said wait just a second.
You've got to be hearing things.
Hades?
Who's Hades?
The true master of the underworld.
Sorry to keep you waiting, but now that I'm here, let's get this party started!
I love this sort of thing, especially in games. Typically when you see a last-minute twist like this, where there's a real evil mastermind that just shows up out of nowhere in the last second, taking credit for all the work the original baddie did, it's a trope that a lot of people take issue with. It's like the, aha, but it was actually this guy who you've never seen or met before. But this sort of thing I dislike in media and storytelling. Why does Hades get a pass? Well, it's the execution and the aftermath.
What an accomplishment! Goodness, you should put this on your resume.
Hades is a huge dramatic ham, blending humor and dread, and Hades' lighthearted taunts contrast the dire implications of his power. It has this balance of levity and menace that makes his introduction memorable, helped by the ominous music and the performance by Hades' voice actor S. Scott Bullock, who also had some various other roles.
Card Gone Wild! Joker! One Hard Gangster! Diamond! You can find me at the club! Have your pet neutered or spayed! Ow, 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 ow! I'm hurt! I mean hurt! Together we are the... Magnific!
Douchebags. Point is, this character comes off like a showman, ready to have a good time, and for the rest of the game, he becomes the main antagonist. So unlike when that trope is used, this isn't really done at the end of the story. If anything, it's at the halfway point. Plus, the fact he's entertaining adds a lot to it.
Hello again. Hit.
Hades.
Hit.
Hades.
Hit.
Hades. Hades. Excuse you.
Not even death can stop the god of the underworld from being a huge ham. And it's not like Hades is all show and no substance. No, this guy has a villain and a boss. Whew, boy. He's technically a multi-phase boss fight that keeps the players on their toes, with a blend of fast-paced shooting and strategic targeting, where every phase introduces something new to prevent the monotony and reflecting the unpredictable nature of Hades. Hell, another chapter, number 23, you're literally fighting against Hades' heart, and while you destroy his heart...
That really hurt. But hey, at least I'm not dead!
Then again, this guy can survive being cut in two and having his head punched off.
I am your master, Medusa, and I will revive you as many times as I desire.
Honestly speaking, Hades is just a fun villain in gaming and is a great example of how to do an actual good twist villain, since you actually have to have more than half a game with him being the main antagonist, so you get to have more time to flesh him out.
I must bid you adieu.
I don't think anything's going to interrupt me this time, hopefully. But villains in video games are a work of art in and of themselves, and unlike films, you the player can have a much more intimate interaction with these characters since you're basically playing with them through the screen. It's that kind of element I love when it comes to video games, and even more so when you manage to overcome these baddies in their own fields. There's something about Virgil kicking your ass countless times, you trying to time the Royal Guard techniques to block his powerful attacks, getting the timing right when you finally get it down, you realize you spent 30 minutes fighting him and you can do more. That feeling of accomplishment when you manage to defeat a villain of pure skill, I think it's something everyone should feel to some extent, and it's only accomplished by actually engaging with their games and mechanics. It's one thing to watch these scenes on YouTube, but it's another to actually enjoy the story firsthand, going through the trials these villains create for the players. It gets you super invested, and that's what a great villain should do, and games make it so easy. They should be able to pull you into their world and make you want to defeat them. And that to me is what makes a great villain in video games. I'm MangaKamen, and thanks for watching.